Hello, everyone. Welcome to another webinar organized by Global Branches. Today, we'll have the pleasure of talking COVID-19 TCM approach on Western herbs. And for that, we invited Thomas Avery Garran, who's a PhD and author of the books Western Herbs and Chinese Medicine, Methodology and Materia Medica, and Western Herbs According to TCM, a Practitioner's Guide. Also, we have the pleasure of inviting and of having brought with us Rita Antão. She's a Portuguese well-known TCM practitioner and herbalist with a bachelor degree in industrial chemistry with a specialization in organic chemistry. And she has been researching with Professor Jeremy Ross on Western herbs. Rita and Thomas, first of all, thank you so much for being here today with us. Thank you for accepting this invitation and this challenge. Rita and Thomas will share their vision and experience on COVID-19 and how to treat the different stages of this disease, namely prevention, influenza-like stage, pneumonia stage, and recovery stage. And we'll see how to do that with Western herbs formulas from, again, the TCM point of view. Before we start, I would like to remind you that this presentation will last about 1 hour with an additional 30 minutes for clarifying doubts. So we're going to start. I'm going to start sharing my screen so we can see the PowerPoint. And can you see my screen?
Yes.
Beautiful. So let's put up this in the big screen. That's it. So welcome again, and we're going to start on the prevention stage, and I'm going to ask, please, Rita, if you could start telling us what are your suggestions for deficiency archetype of patient and excess archetype of patient. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Okay, about that case of deficiencies with all that symptoms, we can take that tincture of thymus, tuya, glycyrrhiza, and gingiber. Okay, that tincture, what's gonna make it is tonify the Wei Qi, and primarily the thymus is usually for the infection, respiratory infections, and tonify the Qi of the lung. And tuya is a good also for the cough and also for the tonify the Wei Qi. And glycyrrhiza are here also for moisten the lung and also for tonify the kidney Qi. And gingiber is a good diaphoretic, and so in that combination, they're gonna help the other plants to give the diaphoretic action. And the infusion is with thymus again and with Achillea. That infusion are here, and also you see in the other case, but that infusion can be taken for everyone in prevention. But everyone don't have signs of heat or and symptoms specific, you can take for prevention like 15 days, 1 month. But if you have symptoms of more cold or more hot, so we mix another plants. So that infusion, thymus and vulgaris and Achillea, here in the deficiency, we can join, for instance, we can join here cinnamon and gingiber also for put more tonify more that action, diaphoretic action. Okay.
I see. Then let me ask you this. Is there any difference between the use of tincture and infusion? Which one do you recommend according to each situation? Or do they do exactly the same thing, meaning it doesn't matter if it's a tincture or if it is an infusion, in your opinion?
No, there are one thing principle that in general, the infusion is more weak than the tinctures, no? And the infusion I can take for more time than the tinctures, no? But for another reason, another situation, and that is that they are plants that is more, the active principles are more effective in the infusion or decoction because they are more soluble in water. And there are other plants, they are, because the constituents of them is more soluble in alcohol. So we make the tinctures. So depends of the, if I want more stronger or not, and depends also the plants that I use.
I see. What about for excess types of patients? What do you suggest as a tincture?
Okay. With excess, we have heat here. Can be excess of heat. Also can be have some deficit of heat, and also can have also some deficit of heme. And here we have again the thymus and Echinacea sambucus in gingiber. The thymus is here because it's tonify the lung and also is a very important plant for the cough. But after we're gonna join plants more more fresh, is like Echinacea. Echinacea is like the studies that making a lot of years ago, more 100 years ago, is very good for respiratory infections, and also very good for inflammation of the mucus, and so is here because that, and also is very good for clean the pathogen the pathogen heat, you know, that are retaining in the body. So you use here that, and you put sambucus also because it's a good diaphoretic and is good for the fever. But also here, what's gonna make it is diaphoretic. It's making it gonna put away the pathogen, external pathogen factor. No, sorry, the pathogen, external pathogen of heat, then can attack the people that have already heat in the body. You know?
I see. Very well.
Infusion, I recommend the same, the thymus vulgaris, the thymus with Achillea, but here I put also, depends of the case, if the people have more heat, I put also the peppermint, the Mentha piperita, okay?
I see. Thomas, would you like to add something according to this prevention stage?
Yeah, sure. So for me, when I see these two particular patterns that we're talking about here, what we call deficiency or vacuity, then that is the person is weak, right? So the person is perhaps their Wei Qi or their Qi in general is weak. Generally, I mean, if you look at these symptoms, you're thinking about, you know, spleen Qi is deficient or vacuous. So we want to think about how we can supplement the spleen, and in doing so, that helps to supplement the Wei Qi, right? Because the spleen is the place where you know, you make Qi on a daily basis, as it were. So rather than talking about herbs here, I'd like to talk about just, you know, some basic things that we should consider if you're in that state, because we're talking about prevention here, not necessarily treatment. So, you know, dietary things are really important. Proper exercise is really important. You know, proper rest is really important. These kinds of things, and for this, so this person, you know, what they should be eating is things that are maybe a little bit more warming and nourishing. Maybe this person needs to eat some, you know, include bone stock into their diets. You know, like and maybe some ginger and soups, and just kind of like warm, nourishing type of things. Where this other situation where you have this excess or repletion, that person is more likely, not necessarily, but more likely to be someone who consumes too much sugar, too much fried food, too much alcohol, or all of the above. And so it's maybe more of a situation where removing some of these things from their diet is beneficial, but also, adding perhaps, some more vegetables into their diet. So here, what I'm talking about really is to, try to remove or reduce some of the inflammation in the body and get the spleen qi functioning properly again, because that's what's really critical for, if you want your wei qi to be strong, which is housed in the lungs, of course, you need to have a strong spleen, because the spleen is the earth. Spleen is the root of really, we talk about kidneys being the root, but the kidneys, that's what you were born with. That's the qi you were born with, and you can't really replace that or add to that so much. But the spleen is what you are making qi on a regular basis. So if you want to strengthen your lungs, you need to strengthen your spleen, or keep your spleen healthy. So that's kind of, I think, sort of, I know it sounds like, oh yeah, we know that, like, okay, sure. But it's really critical. It's really super important that those things are addressed with any patient, whether it's in a prevention situation or if they've already started to get sick. These things are critically important. And so, of course, in Chinese medicine, I don't want to go too far of that, but the primary formula for that first complex here, this deficiency or this vacuity complex, would be Yuping Fang Sang, right? So that's like Huang Qi, Baizhu, Fang Feng. Those three herbs, plus usually has ginger and sometimes a jubi added to it. But so that's like, those are literally supplementing the spleen and then adding a little bit of sort of what you might call resolve in the exterior or diaphoretic action with the Fang Feng. But at the same time, you have the Huang Qi and the Baizhu that are sort of securing the exterior. So you're not really getting too much in the way of a fusion. You kind of have this action where one herb is trying to fuse the exterior a little bit, while the other two are kind of holding it in, if you will. So it's almost like a pull and a push at the same time, which is what strengthens, or part of what strengthens the wei qi. So, you want to consider that if you're putting any herbs together in a formula, that this is the signature formula in Chinese medicine. How can I do that with Western herbs? So, and the other one, really, if you were going to give herbs for that in Chinese medicine, you would give something to clear the excess and reduce the inflammation. And that could be any number of things depending upon what's really going on here.
I see. Thank you. I don't know if you would like to add something, Rita, before we pass to the influenza-like stage.
No, it's okay. I agree. The diet, everything that Thomas says, I agree also. And also that formula also is the same, I think.
Oh, actually, yeah, I'll add one thing to that. Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off there, Rita.
No.
The Echinacea, we used to think that Echinacea was really only good when you got sick. But as it turns out, it may actually, or, pretty much most people understand now, or, if you're well studied, to understand that Echinacea is something you can take long term to supplement or boost the immune system. So it's something to consider in either of these situations, really. Though I would be maybe a little bit more careful in the deficiency stage, which is probably why Rita didn't put it in there, but certainly it could be used in there if it was balanced with other herbs, because it is inherently clearing heat, and so it's cooling, but I don't think it really has a huge negative effect on the body, even if you're deficient. So it's pretty flexible herb, actually. There's a reason why it's so popular and so important.
Yeah, it's because that also I mixed with ginger and thymos, that incorporating that are also the fresh of the plant.
Right.
Okay.
Perfect.
Okay.
I like it.
Okay. Thank you.
Very well. Let's go to the.
I like it also. I agree with you.
the influenza-like part, where in this first case study you have an onset of a fever, mostly low-grade fever, aversion to cold and fear of cold, chills, headache, ticklish throat, soreness of muscles of the limbs, and loss of taste and smell, which is a very talked symptom of COVID-19. And maybe we could start with you, Thomas, by explaining a little bit to us this herbal formula that you suggested.
Yeah, sure. Okay, so as you can see, I included the Echinacea, and you're going to see it over and over and over again here in these formulas as kind of the lead herb. It's one of those herbs that I use almost universally in any kind of infection. I think I can't really honestly think of a time when I would think, oh no, I can't use Echinacea. It's pretty much, you can use it across the board. So so just to look at the herbs just briefly, so we have Echinacea, Verbena. So Verbena is an herb actually that you'll see when this ebook that my colleague Shelley Oakes and I did comes out, that there's actually research here in China that supports the use of Verbena for COVID-19 and other types of infections like this. So even though it's a European herb, it's actually in the Chinese Materia Medica, and it's an official herb that's used not extensively, but certainly, especially more in the South, is definitely used and discussed. So, and then yarrow, elder, and peppermint is sort of a really classic combination for you know, first onset of any kind of a cold or flu or anything like that. So then rosemary is added in. So then, you know, because this is like, it's a bit of a mix of symptoms here. Like you have a little bit of a fever kind of happening, but then there's all these sort of cold symptoms. So then the rosemary and the angelica are warming. And maybe I could have put a little bit more of one of those things in there. You know, maybe I could have put more like 6 or 10 grams of angelica in there. I probably wouldn't want to put too much more rosemary in there. Rosemary is such a strong herb. And then the licorice is there to sort of harmonize the formula. So basically you have this group, the Echinacea and the Verbena are there together to clear heat and resolve the exterior to help deal with the, you know, onset of this thing. That we have a little bit of fever, so we know that there's some heat, even though they have this aversion to cold and chills and stuff. And then the yarrow, elder, and peppermint are all cooling, but they're the classic formula, classic trio to release the exterior and cause sweating to push the pathogen out of the body. And then the rosemary and angelica are both warming, and the rosemary is good for resolving the exterior as well and opening up the lungs. I think of it as probably the only thing that's even close, and it's still not really that close, but the only thing that's even close in action to ephedra. So even though it's not ephedra, and I wouldn't say that it's a perfect substitute, it's the closest thing that we have in the West, as far as I know, really. There's a native herb in the United States that maybe we could use, but it's not really used very much. But anyway, so then the angelica also, it's going to help to treat the headache and the soreness in the limbs. And again, I probably should have put a little bit more in there. I think a double or a triple dose that I have written there would have been more appropriate. And then the licorice you're going to see in pretty much every formula, because it helps to harmonize it and it helps to make it a little bit less harsh on the spleen and stomach, or specifically the stomach, when you consume this. This is a decoction, by the way. And this could also, this exact same formula could be made into a tincture. There's no reason why it couldn't be a tincture. All these herbs work great as tinctures.
And just to make sure, Verbena here, you're mentioning Verbena Officinalis, right?
Yes. What's the That's
I
my
was
wife.
I was also thinking about that one, but we had a participant.
Yeah, I can't say it. Ergabo. I don't know how to say it.
Yeah,
How do you say it?
In
What's
Portuguese,
the Portuguese name for that plant?
It's verbena.
it's verbena. It's exactly the same.
It's the
It's
same.
exactly. It's the same. It's
But
not
there's another
oregano.
name I have here. It's Urgebao. Anyway, okay, doesn't matter.
A-O. I don't know. I must admit.
You can write, because you can write.
Yes. I'm doing that right now.
Okay. I just know about that name, but you can write.
Maybe in the meantime.
No, it's not that one.
It's not the same. And it's not Ortiga, and it's not Urgebão.
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 That's the name that you guys gave me in the. Anyway, let's not get distracted about that.
Yeah.
We have people here that are actually here to listen to us. So.
No, Urgebão can be in popular name, can be in some places, but Ortiga, no. Yeah.
Okay. Verbena, another popular name for verbena apparently is Urgebão. Very well. Maybe Rita, you could talk to us about the tincture and the infusion proposals that you did on this case study.
Okay. Well, that tincture I make because about that case, when I see that case, I see, okay, they are cold here. That cold attack the muscles. No? We have pain in the muscles, and that cold maybe are entering the muscles. No, there are invasion of wind, cold that can also stuck in the muscles. So because I make that tincture is like a mix. So we have plants, diaphoretic plants like Achillea, Myrica, Xanthoxylum, Gingiber. They are diaphoretic to put away the wind, cold. And for another side, we have Cinchona. Cinchona is a plant that is very used for malaria cases. It's antiviral and also is very usually to use, that I learned with Jeremy also. But my practicals, I use it for recuperation the heart after fever. No? Or when you have fever, recuperation the heart, no? And also is good for the gut flora, no? For the increase the appetite and normalize the gut flora. And so I put here because it's like when is fever in that case, okay, Cinchona are here to stabilize the heart in that situation of the fever. And besides that, Populus is a plant that I use. They have principle, for instance, in the active principle of that is the acid acetylsalicylic, no? And so I use for when it's pain in the muscles, no? So that form is a combination of diaphoretic to put away the cold, but also some plants to go inside to put away the wind, cold in the muscles. Here, Populus, I can substitute also for Angelica, Archangelica, like Thomas also used in the herbal form of him. Also, I use Angelica, Archangelica for put away the cold wind in the muscles or articulations. And besides that, I joined with that infusion, capsicum, gingerbread, and cinnamon. That infusion is more simple because it's more simple in the question that just is diaphoretic. No? If I see of the people are really cold with really chillies, I additionate that infusion to the people in that cases. No? If the people is not so cold and there are more pain in the muscles, I just give the tinctures.
Very well.
I like the Populus. That's a great choice.
Okay.
And you're using the bark of that?
Bark, yes, I use the tincture of the bark because here is not so easy the bark, the plants, and so I use tinctures.
Yeah, that's great. I don't have a lot of experience with that herb, but it's I think it's a perfect fit here. yeah, I think it's a great idea.
Okay. Yeah, I very resulted about with that when the wind cold, and also when I have inflammation also. No? When I have some heat also, he put away. He good for the inflammatory, no? Anti-inflammatory of the articulation.
Right.
I see.
Good.
Thank you.
Very well. Let's move on to our second case study. This time we've got fever, we've got aversion to cold, sore and dry throat, dry cough, scanty sputum, sore and painful muscles in the limbs, weakness and headache. So please, Thomas, tell us about this herbal formula,
Sure.
which is slightly different from the previous one.
It's pretty different, actually. So of course, I lead off with Echinacea again, as I tend to do with these situations, as I said, and again Verbena. So they're forming sort of the crux of the lead of the formula. And then so because we have the sore throat and the dry cough, then so I added in yarrow here. But along with the yarrow, mullein, which is verbascum. So along with the verbascum that I added here, that goes along with the pleurisy root and the elecampane and the marshmallow. Those 4 herbs really are to focus on helping to moisten and get the person to be able to expectorate the phlegm. Because when people have if a patient has a dry cough with scanty phlegm, that really means that the mucous membranes are dry. And so we want to moisten them a little bit, and we want to help the person to be able to expectorate the phlegm, because when they expectorate the phlegm, they can clear out their lungs, and then they have better oxygen exchange, so they can breathe better. So those 4 herbs together really help to mark this. I don't necessarily want to stop the cough here. So although there's time here, and yarrow doesn't really stop the cough so much. These are more the time is more in there for the sore throat, yarrow for the sore throat, and also to help to release the exterior. And then the angelica again is in there to help to with the muscle weakness, or painful muscles and headache. Again, that maybe could be increased a little bit. The populace from the last formula that Rita put together could perhaps be added to this. I want to also just say that, before we do any more of these formulas, what you'll see is our formulas are very different, but also there's, on a different day, I might make a different formula. If I'm standing in front of the herbs in the pharmacy and I'm looking at all, I might choose some different things. So these are guides. People shouldn't go, oh, okay, this is the formula. It's not the formula. It's a formula. Okay.
Okay. Yeah.
Very well. Please go ahead, Rita.
Okay. Yeah, I'm also with I think also like Thomas say now, and good you say that, because I was thinking in the same, because I see the 2 formulas, me and Thomas, and say, oh, the form of Thomas complement mine, and mine, well, the complement of the 2, because also I like Thomas. If I see a person instead in front of me, maybe I make another mix, no? But what I see here is I'm concentrate when I see the case. I'm concentrating in inflammation, when I see that case, I say that is very heat inside, no? They are cold, also aversion to cold, but they are like inflammation of the mucus, no? The membranes. And so I make the Isatis, berberis, echinacea for that anti-inflammatory action and for recuperation the membranes, no? Of the lungs and also of the gut flora. But when I see the herbal formula from Thomas, I see, okay, maybe I must put some here plants for the cough, because I don't put, no? That's gonna be keep off the heat and the anti-inflammatory, and gonna moisten the lung, but not gonna produce the cough, no, for put away the mucosities. And so I think it's a good complement to two together in different cases, in different cases. And like Thomas says, it's like that is just suggestions, no? And after we must see case to case. But I think with that, the people already know we must make it, no? And what we think to building a formula, no?
Very well, I see. Would you like to add anything, Thomas, before we move on to the next case?
I don't think so. I totally agree with what Rita just said. I mean, I think it's important to remember that we're sort of listing some symptoms here without any background on the person or their constitution or whatever prior other issues they might have. And so, I just want to make sure that people understand that these are starting places. These are models that you can use that need to be adjusted accordingly. And keep in mind also, we're trying to do this, at least I tried to do it with 0 Chinese herbs at all. Like I would almost never do that. I would always pretty much combine Western and Chinese herbs together just because that's what I do. But, but for these formulas today, I think there are no Chinese herbs in any of the formulas I put together for this presentation. So there might be situations where I might. Oh no, there's one. Yeah, I put. Well, we'll see that in a little bit. So anyway, so people should keep that in mind as well.
I see. Very well. Moving on then to our third case study in the early stage.
Can I say?
Yes, sure, Rita. I'm sorry.
I give that tincture also in the cases that the people are with the first stage, but when the people are really dry, people are really dry and they coughing very dry, and I begin to stop the inflammation, in the beginning, And that formula, that tincture, normally we give 3-4 days, 3-4 days, and after you must change, because came another symptoms.
Okay, very well. Thank you. That is an important precaution, I'd say. Very well. Next and final case study of the early stage infection in influenza-like symptoms. This time we have aversion to cold, fever or absence of fever. It can be both, dry cough and dry throat, fatigue, weakness, also chest stuffiness, epigastric distension, nausea, diarrhea, and the signs are pale tongue with a white greasy coating and a slippery pulse. So let's start with the herbal formula. Of course, as Thomas was saying, this is just a list of symptoms. It doesn't take in account people's constitution and also the little details, the differential diagnosis to each and every symptom that we can do.
Okay, so here clearly the disease process has gotten more serious. Pretty much everything that was happening before is worse, and now you have significant digestive issues happening. So this formula reflects that's quite a bit different. So, I mean, I've increased the echinacea by half, so now it's up to 15 grams, and I've added the marubium. So the marubium is really good for the chest stuffiness, to open the chest up. I kept the verbena in there and the mullein in there and the pleurisy root for all the same reasons they were in the last formula, as well as the Echinacea. The angelica here is actually now being sort of applied in a different way. So rather that the angelica and the ginger and the fennel, along with the licorice, are serving to help to deal with the nausea and diarrhea and epigastric distension. So they're really more focused on the middle and the digestive process. The Huangtian was added in here. That's a Scutellaria bicalensis, the Chinese Scutellaria, Chinese skullcap. That's added in here to have a stronger heat clearing action, specifically in the upper burner. That's an herb that, you know, probably could fit in any one of these formulas. Is there anything else I really want to say about that? Not at the moment. Go ahead, Rita.
Okay. Well, okay, when you remember, you say, okay?
People be patient with us. This is the first time that she and I have done this together. So we're sort of learning how to work together as you're listening. So at least it was free.
Yeah. Well, when I see that case, I see, okay, it's a severe case, more severe case. And also we have here cold. And also we have here affect also the heart. Like, also that weakness can come also for a weakness from the heart. And so I make that formula to keep off the cold, to tonify the Wei Qi, but also to put away also some dampness that can have and can obstruct or make obstruction on the heart, the digestive process, no, in the spleen, because we have all that symptoms of the heart. And so I make here the tuya, because here tuya appears, I use tuya and thymus. I use a lot when I want to tonify the Wei Qi, and I also want to move some mucosities or dampness in the lung, and also they support a little the heart. And so after I put sanguinaria and commiphora mirra, that also gonna support gonna warm the heart, gonna warm the body and support a little of the heart and the clean dampness. And after capsicum, he's here because it's really cold. I put capsicum. If the people is not so cold and is not necessarily sweating, okay, I keep off the capsicum. But if the people is really cold and need to put away that cold and need to sweat to put away the external pathogen, I use that capsicum. And lobelia I put here just for one thing, because lobelia I use when the cough is really severe coughing, no, the spasmodic cough. And so I put here lobelia if it is spasmodic cough. Sorry, my English sometimes is not very good. And I hope you understand.
Great. It's much better than my Portuguese.
Don't worry, Rita.
Okay. And okay, lobelia is here because that if the people, for instance, if the people is not so so bad in the cough, is not spasmodic cough, I can keep off and just stay with the prunus rutina, or can, for instance, put another plant like marubrio, for instance, that's like Thomas says, that open the chest and also gonna have an actuation in the cough. And so prunus is here because it's moisten. No? Here I use when I want to moisten the lung, for also it's more easy to put away the dampness. No? And glycyrrhiza is because it's helping the formula, but also supporting the heart and also warm the heart and supporting that Wei Qi, that thymus and tuya, that action of tonified Wei Qi that thymus and tuya make it. And besides that, I give together, or sometimes, because that is when I have the people, sometimes I give together, if it's possible, give the two, the tincture of the infusion and the infusion. But other times I just have the opportunity to give the infusion. It depends the herbs I have, and then it depends if a person call to me and says, oh, I am at home at 30 kilometers of distance, what I can make. And so I must adapt it to some plant that is more easy to find here in Portugal. And so I make that infusion that with thymus, marubio, achillea, that is the function of diaphoretic, and help also the spleen to not produce the dampness, and Echinacea Officinalis, that's gonna make that increase that action, the diaphoretic action, and supporting also the heart for also tonify the heart, tonify the Wei Qi, help to tonify the Wei Qi, but also to eliminate some dampness. Okay. It's
Very
all.
well. Would you like to comment on that, Thomas, before we pass on to the
Yeah, I'd like to
pneumonia
talk a
stage?
little bit about lobelia, if I might.
Sure.
I didn't include it in any of my formulas, and not because it's not important, because it certainly is. And I think that one of the things that lobelia can be used for that Rita didn't mention is that it can actually be used when there's a dry cough, whether it's spasmodic or not, because it can also help to, the way you take it is you take it as a tincture, but you take it in, about, basically you take it to tolerance, which means take it until every maybe 5 or 10 minutes, or a little bit, maybe 15 or 20 minutes. Take it until you start to feel nauseous. And then usually what that will allow you to do is it'll actually moisten your lungs, because it'll cause these secretions in your lungs and you'll cough stuff out. So it can be really effective for just basically like getting a bunch of stuff out of your lungs. And it can also, even though I've only used it once for this, and it's in this stage, it's probably not perfect, but I'll just talk about it here now since I'm talking about lobelia. It can actually, so one of the old names for lobelia is pukeweed. So it was actually, classically it was used to cause emesis, cause people to throw up. And so if you have serious phlegm problems, like we're going to maybe talk about here later in this presentation, but again, I'm just going to talk about it now since I'm talking about lobelia, is that you can actually take lobelia until you vomit, and you will vomit out a lot of this phlegm and crap in your stomach, and you will feel much better. Yeah. Now, it's not a pleasant experience. No one likes to vomit. But the one time that I've used lobelia in this way was on myself, so I can say for sure exactly how it works and what it feels like. And I can also say for sure that I felt much, much, much better after I vomited. Okay. So I think that it's certainly something to consider. And we'll talk about other ways to do that later on. But anyway, yeah.
Very well. Would you like to add something, Rita?
No, it's okay. Okay, yeah, is that the thing also? Yeah, I have sometimes, normally I have careful with the quantity of lobelia, because that Thomas say, if the person don't borrow with that, is good. Also Thomas said. But sometimes when the person don't want, I just have a few for that don't provoke that vomit, no. But if it's necessary, it's very good in that. Yeah, with Thomas said, I agree.
It's a fabulous herb that people really should understand how to use. It has a lot of different uses, but it's also one of the most disgusting flavors that you're ever going to put in your mouth.
Yes.
It's really nasty, and I love to take all kinds of nasty things, and it's one of the worst ever.
Yes, it's true, but it's a good taste.
Yeah, it's good. It's good. It just tastes terrible. Okay, next.
So then moving on to the pneumonia stage. Let me pass on the slide. So in this fourth case study, we have a patient with fever, which is more pronounced in the afternoon. He's got alternating chills with fever, cough, absence of wheezing, conjunctivitis, bitter taste in the mouth, dry mouth, chest stuffiness, and stifling sensation. Also chest and hypochondriac fullness and distension. Not to mention irritability, nausea or vomiting, no appetite, and general weakness. So, Thomas, what can you tell us about this herbal formula you prepared for this
Well,
case?
first of all, I can say this person is really sick, right? So notice that the dosages have increased fairly significantly. Echinacea remains in the formula, as does marubium and pleurisy root. Huangqin also remains in this formula, but the dosage is double. Verbascum also, and then so one of the new herbs that's added to this is Scrophularia. Scrophularia is very good for clearing heat. In Chinese medicine, of course, it's used for clearing heat from the blood level, but it's also used for any kind of swellings and as a sort of very deep level herb to clear heat. So this is a really important herb here because clearly the progress of the disease has gotten much more serious. So we really need to get in there and clear as much heat as we can. On top of that, what I think is important, I want to note here, in our Western herbal medicine, we generally only use the upper portions of the plant. But in Chinese medicine, the root is used. Now, I'm not familiar with the European species of Scrophularia, but if it's like, actually, no, that's not true. I have seen the root. It's similar to the one, even maybe a little bit smaller than the native one from California that I'm used to using. So that's a little bit of an issue because the Chinese species has a much bigger root, but the root and the herb are pretty different medicines, although there's a lot of similarity. In this case, in this situation, using the root, using the herb would be okay, although I would say the root is better. Because really what we're trying to do is clear heat and drain the heat from the body. So I've also added the ground ivy here, and because that's a very good herb to clear inflammation. It's good for conjunctivitis and clearing heat out of the chest area. And then we have, 3 herbs that are focused on the digestive stuff. Now, this is another place. This is a place where it's potentially appropriate to actually drain. So one of the ways that in Wenbing that this kind of pathogen is dealt with in the body is actually to give like a Da Chengqi formula, which is a formula that's based around Da Huang. Da Huang. Da Huang is rhubarb. So in a situation like this, where you have this fever and you have all this, you have this stifling sensation in the chest, you have all this fullness, but then you also have this nausea and vomiting. Clearly, things aren't going so good, and you need to be able to get this heat and pathogen out of the body. And so one of the ways that this could be done would be to first do this draining with a Da Huang formula, with a rhubarb formula, and then come back and apply a formula like this. Now, notice at the end, I put Panax in parentheses. So one of the signs that you have here, or 2 of the signs you have here are no appetite and weakness. So keep in mind that although, a lot of people always say, well, you have an active infection, you can't give Panax, you can't give ginseng, whether it's American ginseng or Chinese ginseng, and that is categorically false. If the person is too weak to fight the disease, you need to give them something to help their energy. And so you'll see that in the ebook that I have coming out, that's they used actually ginseng on a somewhat regular basis, even during active disease process, because patients were so weak that they couldn't actually fight the disease. So I think that's important to remember. Now, dosage is definitely an important thing. You're not going to give high doses, although sometimes you do. And so this is one of the things that this doctor discusses. They were giving sometimes up to 60 grams of Panax ginseng Renxian a day, which is a really high dose. But if your patient is super weak, and like literally, they were talking about people that couldn't really get out of bed just to use to the bathroom. So giving them high doses of ginseng really helped. It also helped to keep their blood oxygenated. So, you know, part of the reason why they were weak, literally, is because they were suffocating. I mean, they didn't have enough oxygen in their blood, so that ginseng helps to do that. So, again, you know, we have this formula that's sort of a start. And again, you know, some of the herbs are the same, and I'm not going to like every time go through the same herbs, but that's sort of like a starting point. Yeah. Excuse me. So go ahead, Rita.
Okay. Okay, thank you. Well, when I see that case, also I see that's really bad, no? And I see that have a problem here of the people are really weak. The weiqi are really weak, and for another side, for another part, they have really hot, no, excess, no, dampness, hot, and so I put that formula that is with IF plants like thymos, tuya, and achillea that's gonna tonify the weiqi and gonna have strong also for the lung, and they are also aromatic and acrid, and so they also gonna, in a certain way, they also gonna move and put away the dampness and provide that don't the spleen create more dampness, but in secondary effects, no. And for another side, I put Echinacea and Hydrastis, because they the anti-inflammatory action, and also because Echinacea put away the retained factor pathogenic, no? And Hydrastis also is very good when is there a problem of the good flora, and also gonna anti-inflammatory effects, and also gonna regenerate the mucous, the membranes of the digestive, the good, no? And glycyrrhiza and gingerber I put here also to have effect tonic, but also gingerber because diaphoretic, no, and help the other plants like achillea to increase the diaphoretic action. And citrus, I put here citrus like Thomas also, but because all that situation in the heart, no, and all that situation of the spleen to create that dampness, and also for don't create stagnation, I put the spleen to move the median upload the heart and don't create also the dampness. And so that tincture is like for one side we tonify the weiqi and move. And for another side, we action like anti-inflammatory and clear that hot that are here, that they are creation inflammation in the mucus. Okay.
I see.
Want to say something?
Thomas, would you like to add up something?
No, but I noticed that there's a couple of questions that we didn't address. Should we address those?
We told people to address them in the Q&A, and we'll be replying them
Do that at the end.
Yes,
Okay.
at the end of the presentation.
Okay.
Therefore, tell us.
Yeah,
please.
I think we can move on. I think that's good.
Okay. So as you were saying, it's important for patients having pneumonia crisis to be hospitalized. And nevertheless, it's really interesting to understand what tools we have to help out those patients. So moving on to the fifth case study, we have a low-grade fever or absence of fever, dry cough, scanty sputum, dry and sore throat, fatigue, weakness, poor appetite, chest stuffiness, epigastric distension, nausea and or vomiting, and loose stool. So please tell us about this herbal formula you got us, Thomas.
Yeah, it just seems like I keep using the same herbs over and over and over again, doesn't it? Well, of course they are somewhat modified each time, and so what you'll notice about this formula is now I've said, okay, we need to bring the Panax into this situation, right? This person is clearly has some significant weakness, and the other thing that I think is important to note here is the Ellen campaign, and what I said, honey mixed fried. So this is applying a Chinese poucher technique onto a Western herb, something, in this particular case, something that I've done a fair bit. And so this is a process that's actually not too difficult to do on your own, where the herb is combined with the sliced, roots, dried roots are combined with the honey, and then it's actually cooked. Like, you can do it in a wok. It's easier in a wok because of the shape of the pan, but you certainly can do it in a flat pan. It's just easier in the wok because it's easier to keep things moving. And then it's basically done. It's basically heated until, and you keep it stirring and moving it around until the honey, like all the water is gone from the honey, and the honey sort of, the herb starts to turn a little bit more sort of dark brown, if you will. And the honey sort of candies a little bit, which means it gets hot enough so that the sugars actually turn into almost like candy. And there's no water left in the honey. So if you don't do it for a long enough period of time, what you'll end up is this like mass of goop that's basically impossible to deal with. And if you take that and then you put it in a jar, it's like almost impossible to get it out of the jar. So you need to make sure you cook it enough so that the honey is, all the water has been cooked out of the honey. So the reason I do that is because here now we don't have, we still have this dry cough and sputum and so on and so forth, but we have even more symptoms that are associated with the decrease in spleen or qi. So this is the honey fried Ellen campaign helps to supplement the spleen and help to improve the appetite. So that combined with that for me, that's like the closest we can get to Baiju in Chinese, in Western herbal medicine. So now I've combined that with the ginseng. So then we have, these two herbs together that create this really nice duyao to support the spleen qi. And from there, everything else sort of falls into place. So, I've already sort of talked about these other herbs and how they're, what they're doing here. I think it's, I think that's the important part of this formula, the important change that we see here. I've brought thyme back into the formula here to try to help with the dry, the sore throat. But essentially, that's the key.
Very well, Rita.
Go ahead, Rita.
Okay. Okay. When that tincture I put here is specific for putting away the dampness. No, when I see that case, I see okay, we must put away the dampness. And because that I use that pair, that two plants, that is Grindelia and Pimpinella, that is very good. They put the expectorant, and put away the dampness, and also help the lung. And also with thymus, with thymus 25 way qi and help the lung, and also move some qi, move the qi in the lung, so it's not dampness don't stay, because that is expectorant, Also, I put lobelia, like I was saying before, if the coughing is very severe and we must put away. And serotonin, prunus, serotina, and glycerizer for moisten the lungs. If that two plants moisten the lungs, so it's more easy for the other plants have the action expectorant of that plant. That in that tincture, for sure, like Thomas say, I put here also some plants. I can put here some plants to tonify more the weiqi and tonify the spleen, tonify the kidney, for the people stay with less exhaustion, like ginseng and Elena Campan. I can put also here. I think it was a big good, the ginseng. I think, my opinion. The caution I have here is I put here is a case like more severe, like I normally that formula, Jeremy Ross also was giving for my Jeremy Ross, and she was giving that with bronchitis, very severe, and with the dampness, and with it's very hard to respiration. It's very hard to tie. Our chest is very tight, and we are difficult in respiration, and so. That formal combination of Asclepias, Ilobelia, the two, that pair, is very good to open the lungs and good breathing. And the Echinacea Verbena, Idastris are here because the anti-inflammatory effects, to put away the heat that still maybe have there and cause that dryness and that inflammation of the membranes. And also regenerate, like I said before, the Idastris regenerates the mucus. And pronounced serotonin glycerides are here because that I saying before that moisten the lung, It's done.
Good, I like it.
Very well. Without further ado, we're going to move to our last case study in the pneumonia phase. Or no, it's already the recovery stage. I'm sorry. So last.
Oh, thank God we can recover now.
Yeah, it's all very deep.
So this is for patients that fairly and hopefully survived the pneumonia stage, and nevertheless are quite weakened. So we've got absence of fever, dry cough, chest stuffiness, shortness of breath upon exertion, dry mouth, and weakness. So please tell us about this small formula you got us for this case.
Yeah, it is a small formula. The one thing I didn't actually put in this that I noticed now is I didn't really put anything that would address the stuffiness in the chest. The ginger might, to a certain extent, address that, but that's probably a bit of a deficiency in the formula, to be honest. So I put Panax because really you could use either the Panax ginseng, the Asian ginseng, or the Panax quinquefolium, the American ginseng. So it would depend on, with the symptoms we have here, the American ginseng is probably better. But with some minor changes in the presentation, you could choose one or the other. The rhodiola is another important herb. Right at this point, we're not really trying to, the pathogen is past. Basically, we're trying to build the person back up, and so rhodiola is a very good herb as supplementing qi, getting energy back, kind of preserving yin and building qi. So the marshmallow is to sort of moisten the lungs and moisten the sort of nourished qi or nourished yin. Ginger is going to, like I said, maybe help a little bit with the chest. It also helps to process these herbs, because these herbs, you can't just give these, these first three herbs are all sort of tonifying and a little bit rich in the spleen. So the ginger helps to your body to be able to process these, your spleen to process these, so you can actually use them. And then the licorice is also nourishing. It's the qi, the spleen qi. It's also moistening. And so, although there's not very many herbs in it, it's actually, pretty useful in this situation. And I won't call it complex, but it's certainly enough. And like I said, according to what you have, I don't know if you can hear me now because it says I'm unstable. But
yes, we can hear you. Don't worry, we hear you fine.
Okay. I guess it's my computer that I lost. So anyway, you could add, depending upon the situation, you could add other herbs to this. If there's more yin vacuity, you could add other herbs that might nourish the yin. Like I see that Rita has Ophiopagon, Maimendong. That certainly could be used to nourish the yin of the stomach and the lungs. And another herb that's really good, and I believe, I don't remember seeing it on the list that you guys gave me for herbs that people use in Europe, but there is a European species of Polygonatum, the Solomon seal, and that would also be very good here as a nourishing herb for the yin and lungs. So that's my recovery stage formula.
Very well. Please, Rita, tell us about your tincture.
Okay. And like Thomas says, that phase we can use a lot of different formulas or plants, depends of the symptoms that people have. No, with that symptoms, I find that tincture. I choose that tincture, but after we can have another symptom, like if I have more dryness, or if I have more exhaustions, or if I stay with cold. When after that, the people say that is the guidelines, but after we can join other plants, depends of the symptoms we have. And in that tincture, I miss one plant, is Achillea milfolia. Okay, is Cinchona, Salvia, and Achillea milfolia. I forget to write. I see now. Well, that formula, I concentrate in the, for one side, I give plants that I give after post febrile condition after the people are fever, no? That I was saying before, because that I use Cinchona, no, because they is anti-malaria, but not is in that reason I use now here, is because they recuperation the heart, the yin of the heart that was miss because the fever. So Cinchona gonna recuperate that in the heart, no? And so I use it to give after a person have fever, give Cinchona to recuperating that in of the heart. Also, we're gonna recuperate also the spleen. You're gonna also recuperate the people, gonna give more appetite and begin to eat more. And so in the recuperation phase, it's good that the people begin to eat, no? If don't eat, don't recuperation, no? And that also you make a pair with Salvia and with Achillea, that means here, to recuperation, that Wei Qi and recuperation after have a fever. The Salvia Officinalis, I just put here if the people have sweat in the night. Right? If sweat in the night, I put here, or also I increase the doses. If not, maybe I cut off, if not is the situation. And I use after Panax quinquefolium, and like Thomas also say, I can use also the ginseng, the Panax ginseng, the Korean or the Chinese. But the difference is when I use quinquefolium is because I want to tonify the Qi and also the Yin. No, the quinquefolium also have that action to nourish the Yin of the lung. No, but if the people don't stay with that deficit, with that emptiness of the Yin after the sickness, and stay more with the deficit of the Qi, maybe I can give the Panax ginseng. And after I put off Pogonish, is that I try to not use Chinese plants, but sometimes when I see it's very good, I put here for also to unify the Yin and to unify the Yin of the heart and the lung, and for moisten, no, the membranes, the mucus. And Glycyrrhiza glabra is here for help the formula, harmonize the formula, but also with Prunus serotina, what's gonna make is more emphasizing that moisten the Yin, moisten the membranes, and to nourish the Yin of the stomach and the lung also. The Glycyrrhiza more the stomach, but the Prunus also more the lung. And so I think in that formulas, but it's like I saying, it's like a guideline, and after that is a good formula to after the sickness, but depends of the symptoms that people have, we can change the formula and give what I make also is give an additional infusion to complement that. Okay.
Very well. Would you like to add up something, Thomas?
Well, I just want to say this has been really fun so far, and I hope people who are here, I just want them to know that we're having fun, and And that, you know, hopefully we're going to do more of this. We're going to do more of this, right, Rita? You
Yes,
and I.
yes. For me, was really good. Just that hour, I learned a lot with you, with your formulas and plants. Huh?
Right. So, you know, y'all might have an opportunity to watch us learn from each other and learn from both of us here coming in the future. So stay attached to global branches, because they're the leaders in certainly in Portugal, but I think, you know, we'll reserve the world for now, but let's give them the EU at least.
Thank you very much.
We'll get you over here in China too. I think we can do that.
Yeah.
Very well. We're having comments that this was a bit fast, but I want our participants to realize that it's a lot to talk in an hour. And now we're gonna go to the Q&A section. Please feel free to ask any questions you may want to see answered by our speakers. And also, if you wish to verbally communicate, you can raise your hand instead of writing, if that's a methodology you rather use. Were you going to say something, Thomas?
Yeah, I want to ask what this person means specifically about a little fast. Is it a language issue, or is it that we went through the herbs too fast? Or, I mean, what is specifically the too fast part? I want clarification. So, because if it's a language, not a language issue.
No, not a language issue.
Okay, so it's more about that we went through the plants maybe a little bit too quickly, and you didn't get a chance to.
Well, for any case, fear not, because this webinar will be freely available later through our YouTube channel, and you can watch it more calmly and listen again to it. So you can take fully profit from it.
You can listen to it on slow speed.
Oh, you're welcome. Let's move on to the Q&A section. The first question here says, "Hi, the Herbal Formula. Can we buy it in any herbacery, or must we do it by ourselves?" So you kind of answer it a little during the presentation, saying this was just a suggestion of plants, but I don't know if you want to add up some more thoughts into the question.
Yeah, I mean, I don't really know enough about what is going on there to speak to that. I think this is more something that Rita should address.
Rita, how do you personally do concerning these plants? Do you usually use formulas, or do you usually combine plants by yourself?
Okay. No, usually I try to use the more common plants that the people are can have close, no. But what I make it is use the plants, dry plants. Some that I can, because I see too much. I see when people I treat them all the day, and so I don't have too much time. But in the weekends I can catch some plants. And so I catch the plants and dry, and so I make the infusion, give to the people the dry plants. What the plants I can't catch, I buy to a personnel that's with quality. And so I buy the dry plants and make the mixed and give to my patients. But also, if one person is phone to me and are far away, I say to buy in the shop. No, in that case, buy in the shop, the people can't find all the plants I say. No, normally I have two things. I try to substitute some plants for more common plants, and so I say to the person, and I send by post to the people. If the people want, I send by post to the people the plants. I have for one side that is dry plants, but for other side the tinctures are not available in the shops, in the natural shops, unfortunately, because in the other country like German and Belgium, Holland, the pharmacy they make that tinctures. No? If you are in that country, you can go to the pharmacy and can ask for that tinctures, and I can give you the contacts in pharmacies in German, Belgium, and Holland that make that. If you are in other country, but here in Portugal, yet don't have. I am with that project. I'll see if I can get that soon as possible. But for now, what I make, I buy the tinctures liter in a lab in England, and after I make the formulas to each person or each case. If the people want, I'm Global Blanche also have the contact of that lab that I ordered to in England. That is a lab that Jeremy Ross also worked. And if the people want, also I can supply that and I can send by post, so the people can catch in my consult or in my clinic the tinctures. And if the people have some doubts about the plants or get it, you just can send me an email and I try to send to them or try to substitute to give concepts that substitute the plants to more common plants, more common some. Okay,
Wow.
you understand? My English sometimes is.
Don't worry, it's fully understandable. The second question we have here is if it is possible to download the presentation. Well, as I already said it, you'll be able to watch it pretty much eternally on YouTube anytime you want through our channel. So moving on to the third question. Hello.
Sorry, Alex. Sorry,
yes,
Alex.
Yes,
I just want to
me.
say one thing that came in my heart now is because all that thing is like, you just say one appointment, like it's very important, it's very good and effective, the Chinese formulas, and I use also to Chinese formulas, but we live here, no? And so I think it's very good, we insist in that, in use our plants, no? And so I think that it's good that people think about that. Now, if you live here, why don't you use our plants? No, and they are really powerful. And I can use also Chinese herbal because I use also formulas Chinese and combine. Okay, but so it's just the last thing. Like
yes,
okay,
yes, of course.
Use the plants that's around there.
Hey, it kind of makes sense, yeah. Instead of going to look for plants were too far away for us to reach.
Sometimes also the people phone to me and says, oh, I live in a mountain in the interior of the country. I have just that and that in my garden, what I can make it. And it's possible also that, okay? Because there are so many plants and it is possible to substitute. Sometimes no, it's not the specifical, but we can get it there. We can make new formulas and what the people have around her.
Very well. Thank you for that insight. We have here another long question. Hi, this is very helpful. Thank you all for your help in this. I send my kindness and well wishes to anyone going through a lot of symptoms right now. My question is, I heard many practitioners stated to avoid echinacea or an elderberry, etc. if one is positive with COVID-19. Like the suggested article that he shared here. Any clarification about this precise regard?
Sure, I would like to field that question if I could.
Sure.
I'll try to be nice. Seriously, so that is a concept that's based on flawed science. It's based on laboratory tests, like literally, in a petri dish, and has absolutely nothing to do with how those herbs function in the body in a real person when you give them to them. It's a little bit upsetting to hear that practitioners are saying that. I know that there was some of that going around, but I thought that I've published articles and other people have published articles and put stuff out there to try to make sure that they knew you know, what the truth was about this, and that it wasn't, you know. So I you know, first of all, these herbs have been used for these types of illnesses forever, right? So yes, this is a novel virus, and yes, it has some uniqueness about it, but it's still another virus in a family of viri that humans have been contracting for a very long time. Okay, so to suggest that because there's sort of end stages where people are very, very, very sick on a ventilator in the hospital kind of thing, and they have what's called a cytokine storm. So what this means basically is the immune system has overreacted, and it can make things much worse, frankly. To suggest that because those herbs stimulate cytokines in the body, that then can cause a cytokine storm is clearly, the suggestion just clearly shows that the person doesn't really understand how the body functions, right? So, and to suggest that an herb could do that and cause serious injury to a person, again, suggests that the person doesn't understand how the herbs are functioning in the body. So the answer, the short answer really is, that is false. And as you could see, obviously, from the formulas that both Rita and I put together here, we both use Echinacea and we both use Sambucus in a lot of the formulas. So there you go. That's the answer.
Very well, thank you. Would you like to add something, Rita?
I totally agree with Thomas, and it's really false. It's like appear every time in that things scientific. Okay, that first time for first, all that formulas I present and all that plants, they don't use many years for COVID-19, of course, because they appear now, but they use for influenza, for SARS, for Corona, SARS Corona, right? But in that COVID, we don't have time to see if you're okay, if it's really effect. But we know in Chinese medicine, we know with the symptoms that is very similar, and so we treat the symptoms and the cause, And also we know that Echinacea, for instance, and other plants, is not just now we're gonna use that. No, it's that years and years have also the traditional Western herbs use Echinacea, Asclepias, all that plants that we saying in the formulas. So it's false. Yeah, it's like the people sometimes asking to me like, oh, fennel, I can't give in lactation because a study says that is bad for lactation. And I say, no, it's false. The investigation, like the active principle of fennel, and big amount of fennel, can give intoxication, but it's very big. It's like you must have a room full of
Echinacea.
Now is people don't push the news that came out, and also there are a lot of interest, economic interest, pharmaceutics.
Very well.
Sure.
Thank you for answering, both of you. Moving on to the next question, Ais Kafador asks, hello, did you ever try mangosteen for dry cough?
No, but I could see that it might help, but I don't have any experience using it as a medicine. I like to eat it though.
Okay.
Have you ever tried, Rita?
Yeah, I don't also, like Thomas, I don't also give for dry cough, but I usually give juice of mangosteen to tonify the blood and to give more energy to the people. And yeah, I can say yes, maybe because tonify the blood and can moisten the membranes, but I never use for that. Yeah.
Very well, thank you. Now, a question is concerning the case study number 3. Would you say this case is or should be a Shaoyang stage or a Yangming stage So I'm going to share my screen again so you can see.
Yeah, I have it actually. I have it up, or everyone else can see it. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So would you say this could be a Xiaoyang stage or a Yangming stage?
Well, I would say because of the once you have the diarrhea involved, then you kind of have to have a Yangming, but Yangming is less likely to be diarrhea and more likely to be constipation. So I think it's probably somewhere in the middle. It hasn't really become a full-blown Yangming stage. There's not enough heat signs here really to be a full-blown Yangming stage, but it's also not exactly a Xiaoyang. Like the primary sort of like defining symptom of Xiaoyang is alternating fever and chills,
Okay.
which is not here, right?
Okay.
So I think it in the clinic, it's really obviously anyone who's done they've studied and then they've gone into the clinic, what they realize really quickly is that the textbook and the real life aren't exactly very well connected. I mean, the textbook gives you guidelines, just like these formulas that we put forth here tonight, but people don't exactly act like textbooks. So I guess that's the best answer I can say to that. It's not really clearly one or the other. If there is something in between, I would say that's what it is.
Very, very well. Rita, would you like to add up something?
No, I agree with Thomas. No, nothing.
Very well. Then moving on to the last question we have, and fortunately, because we're just right on time, but if you have still any question, please feel free to ask. We can always answer one or two more. Can you guys please give a hint about water/alcohol proportion to make the tincture, and how much water for decoction? Maybe you want to start answering that, Rita, since you were the one who suggested tinctures, and also Thomas, feel free to comment.
Well, that of course is the infusion. I begin with the infusion and decoction. Normally, I make the standard measure. I make like 1 liter, for 1 liter of water. I put 1 1 tablespoon of 3 plants. No, like 3 tablespoon for 1 liter. Okay, normally, but that is the standard. No, in that infusion I make here for prevention, I make 3 grams of each plant of Achillea and Thymus, 3 grams for 300 milliliters. Okay, because I want really strong that infusion. Okay. So that is the standard, what I was saying before, but after in that situation, I really make more stronger because I want to prevent quickly. I want to put the people more tonified weiqi, and so I must more consistent, no? Also, that is the doses for adults. No? We must know that the doses, there are different doses for children, doses for elder people. And if the person are interested, she can send me an email for you, and I can send that information for you. There are a table that I learned also with my experience and also with Jeremy, and I can send to you that table with all the measures and the grams of with the date, the age of the people. No.
Very well.
The tinctures is like. Before I usually make tinctures. Now, because I more treat the patients, I don't have time to make the tinctures. And I write to a lab to make for me. But when you make the tinctures, is like a processor. Well, it's a processor, but it's easy to make at home. Okay. And what general, I make like, imagine one, imagine like is like 75% of plant and 25 or 30% of alcohol and water. Okay, and just repose and in depth for 1 month, and after you just must mash and go out to tincture. Okay, but also depends of the plant, because lobelia, for instance, is much more not so stronger. We must make because if it's too strong, the people can vomit too quickly. Okay. Well, the person, if are interested, I can send the information about that, because it's not easy to respond just, oh, it's like that. And it's for everything, no? They are standard, but each plants are different, okay? It's not so complicated, but they are different, okay? And I
It's not complicated, but it's complicated. So,
more or less.
but it's too complicated to answer like in this form. So I'll just add to that, just to maybe help clarify a little bit, or maybe I have a slightly different idea or something. I don't know. But for decoctions, like the kind of formulas that I put up, those are you'd want to start with about say 5 cups of water or something, and cook it down to about 3 cups of water. But the cup measurement is not really a cup so much, but like a cup that you are going to drink. And I don't mean like this old-fashioned cup measurement. I mean more like probably say 300 to 500 milliliters is a cup, right? So then you're going to do that about 3 to 5 times, depending upon the amount of herbs you have. You need to make sure that you have enough water covering the herbs, because you're going to, in a decoction, you're going to cook those for somewhere between 20 and 40 minutes, depending on the formula. So you're going to lose some water in that process, and the idea is that you end up with 2 to 3 cups at the end of that process that you're going to drink throughout the day, right? So then infusions are going to be different. So if you're making an infusion, then you're not going to lose any water in that process. You're just pouring water over the herb, right? So you can make it as strong or as weak as you want to make it. You can make a cup, or you can make I usually make, at least 1 liter at a time. Sometimes even more. I mean, for something you're going to be drinking on a regular basis, no reason why you can't put it in a 5 liter jug or something and make a bunch all at once. You're going to drink over the next couple of days. Just keep it refrigerated and then heat it up if you need it, or when you're going to drink it. It's better if you just do it fresh, but some people are busy, and if they can make a big bunch at one time, it's okay. The same is true for the decoctions. You can double that formula, or even triple that formula, and make 2 or 3 days worth, and then just keep it in the refrigerator and heat it before you drink it. The tinctures are a little bit different. So there's a bunch of different styles of making tinctures. People in Europe tend to make tinctures that we would consider weaker. So in the United States, we generally make tinctures at a ratio of about 5 to 1 is the sort of standard. So 5 parts menstruum, which is the alcohol and water, to 1 part herb, with the exception of something like lobelia, which is usually like a 10 to 1. But sometimes it's even like 3 to 1 or 4 to 1. And if you make it with a fresh plant, so if it's a fresh plant and you're just harvested and you're going to just cut and grind up or whatever, then it's 2 to 1, often with very high alcohol content, because the plant itself has a lot of water content, and the higher alcohol content is going to be diluted with the water from the herb, so that you're going to end up with something about what you would end up with, if it was a dry product. So as a general rule of thumb, one thing I would add is that, you can use about 40 to 50% alcohol for many, many, many herbs, though it's not certainly across the board the perfect thing. It's the thing that you probably have the most access to. I don't know what kind of alcohol you have access to there, but you can buy, a good quality vodka and make a tincture with it. It's not going to be the best choice, but it's something for people that maybe don't have access to pharmaceutical grade alcohol. that you can do, and that's gonna put you at about 40%, right? And I don't know, like, again, I don't know exactly what you have available to you, but you can even make a tincture with a port or with a brandy, or, you know, those are not the perfect solvents to use, but you can use them. So for example, I used to really like to make this hawthorn brandy. You buy a really nice brandy and get some really nice hawthorn, and you soak those hawthorns in the brandy, and then it's like it's a nice tonic for your heart that tastes good. Right. So this is not exactly the same thing what we're talking about as far as therapeutics are concerned, but just keep in mind that, like, what Rita was saying is it's easy, but there's a lot of sort of details and variation that, you know, in medicine making. And so I guess that's all I really want to say about that. I think that as far as the dosage is concerned, it really depends. You know, it depends on the person, it depends on the symptoms, depends on the severity of the problem. It depends on, you know, their constitution. I generally, tincture dosages are somewhere between 3 and 5 mils at a time. The one nice thing about tinctures is in these more severe situations, I might actually tell the person to take that 3 mils like every hour. So they're like constantly getting the medicine into their bloodstream. You know, and this is especially true with active infections, and this is a great place to use echinacea or even some of the other herbs. Now, keep in mind that can change things really quickly, right? So you might get like halfway through the day, or, you know, you wake up in the morning and things have shifted dramatically because you've been given, you know, pretty high doses of herbs. But when you have a really serious active infection, that's okay, as long as you recognize that things have changed, and then you need to change the herbs. You can't just keep giving the same herbs, right? So if you, for example, I've seen this before, I've done this before. It's one of the mistakes I've made clinically, where someone came in with a cough, with a really lot of phlegm, and they were coughing it out, but it wasn't really easy to get out, but they were coughing out a lot of phlegm. They had all kinds of phlegm and damp symptoms. So I gave them something that would help to dry that out. And I didn't give them proper instructions that if things started to dry out too much, that they should call me. And what ended up happening is when they came back, they had a really super dry cough because they kept taking the herbs, and it was too much. It went past where they should have been taking the herbs. That was my responsibility, it was my mistake. But then, then you have to backtrack, and then you have to treat this dry cough, which can sometimes be more difficult, right? So, keep that in mind when you're dosing things and giving things to patients that they're not trained in medicine, and so they can't assess themselves. So you need to be able to give them enough information so that they know, if these things happen, you should contact me, or you should stop taking these herbs. And it's not necessarily a side effect. It's just that, they had the function you were looking for, but now it's trying to change the formula so that you don't push them too far in another direction. So that's that.
Thank you. You explained good what I want to say. And I also to say in Portugal what I use also, but sometimes I also the alcohol for the tinctures, but normally what I use is aguardente in Portugal. Is the alcohol from the wine, what I use aguardente also. What I teach to the people to make it is what aguardente. And also I want to say that, like Thomas say, happened to me also, that give a formula and suddenly the people have another thing, because I don't say to the people to stop. But what I say is, like, when I use tinctures and decoctions and or infusions, is really quickly the effects. So you remember that, say to the person, advertise me when you change the symptoms, because it's much more quickly than you give the pills of the Chinese formulas, because it's much stronger.
And it's much easier to change the formula when the person starts to change, rather than trying to take care of something because they kept taking it for too long.
Yeah.
So
is that
everybody's better off that way.
Very well. Since there are no more questions, this concludes this webinar. I would like to remind and tell our participants that Thomas is publishing a free ebook very soonly available called Chinese Medicine and COVID-19 Results and Reflections from China. Make sure to check that out at passiflorapress.com. We shared the links in the chat for you to check it out. And also some other links we shared is panaceahealthonline.com, which is a website where Rita sometimes orders her tinctures. And also, if you want to check Rita's teacher and research partner work, Jeremy Ross, make sure also to check the link called integrativechinesemedicine.com. As for us global branches, be sure to be here next week, this time on Friday at 7 p.m. Greenwich time. We will talk about immunocompromised patients during the pandemic. For that, we'll have the pleasure of receiving Gary Deng, who's a PhD from Memorial Sloan Kettering Cancer Center in New York City, and he will address the pathophysiology of COVID-19 and its implications in traditional Chinese medicine. We will also talk about the current evidence of TCM herbs' potential in managing those immunocompromised patients, as how to approach them safely during the pandemic. And that's it for today. Thank you so much again to our speakers and Thomas and Rita, and also to all our participants. And we hope to see you next week. Thank you very much and have a nice weekend.
Ciao.
Bye-bye. Thank you.